All right, the Pelicans just rocked the Golden State Warriors on national TV, and it was an unlikely hero, kind of, that elevated the Pelicans. I'll tell you who it was and why it may impact the trade deadline. Plus, the three-point shooting stays hot, and it's not a fluke. Let's break it all down in a big-time Pelicans win in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans, a live episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all, coming to you live on a Wednesday night. This is the Thursday episode of Locked On Pelicans, right after the Pelicans straight up smoke the Golden State Warriors, 141-105. My goodness, was that a dominant win. And there's a lot to take away from this one. Jonas Valanciunas was quietly a hero for the Pelicans in this one. One day after I said, maybe you don't look at trading him. We'll explain that, how it's important to the team. I want to look at the three-point shooting because the Pelicans were awesome in this one. A couple other things they did well. Then we'll get into why this is such an important win, a bit of a statement win as well for the New Orleans Pelicans. And if you're watching with me as we do the live show on YouTube, I'm not going to interact with the chat much during the show. We're going to save that all for a bonus fourth segment that's only available on YouTube. So I'm seeing your comments. I'm going to be seeing your questions. I'm going to be interacting with y'all. We'll maybe go for an extra half hour plus. We'll answer your questions with whoever wants to hang out in the chat here in a live episode of Locked On Pelicans. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about this team, whether it's the trade rumors, the trade targets. We've looked at the offense. We've looked at the defense, the X's and O's. We're going to look at CJ McCollum in Friday's show. I want to look at the defense early next week as well as recapping everything that's happening here. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below or in the live chat here as well. And I'll read a couple of them out as we get closer to that fourth segment. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. So let's get into it. First of all, give me your just one or two word reaction to this Pelicans win in the chat on YouTube. I just want to see it. This was fun. If you're a Pelicans fan, this felt really good to do this on national TV. We'll talk more about that in the third segment. But I want to start with Jonas Valanciunas because he was fantastic for the Pelicans in this one. Yes, he was the leading scorer with only 21 points. That's how dominant this one was. 21 points on 9 of 13 shooting, made 2 threes in the first quarter alone, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, a block. He was awesome, right? Jonas Valanciunas, we can all agree, was awesome here. And I thought he was the best player on the court for the Pelicans in this one. This is a dude that's just reliable, right? This is why I've said maybe you don't look at trading him unless you can significantly upgrade. Maybe that's Jarrett Allen, maybe not though. This is a guy who gives you exactly what you need. And in the third quarter, when the Pelicans still had a double-digit lead, right? But the Warriors cut it down, I think, to 13 or 11 in this one and got it a little bit close. Jonas Valanciunas came to the rescue. In the third quarter alone, he scored 10 straight points for the Pelicans. 10 straight points just getting inside, hammering the Golden State Warriors when they were playing small and didn't have anyone that could defend him whatsoever. I don't know if you need to trade that guy right now. I did a show earlier in the season saying maybe he's untradeable in the moment. I don't think he's actually untradeable, but you see that and man, you sure you want to move Jonas Valanciunas after a performance like that, unless you can get like an all-world center, but I don't think you need that on this team. We'll get into the three-point shooting. We'll get into Zion and BI in the third segment as well. He was just good out there. And you've got to give credit to the team and head coach Willie Green for realizing this. Jonas Valanciunas doesn't play the majority of the third quarter. He did in this game, and they just ran the offense through him. They realized that he had an advantage there, and this team took advantage of it, right? Like they dictated the game, which is not something that you always see. That's what you love to see from a head coach, right? Growth, realizing what in the moment, those in-game tactical decisions that need to be made, what the correct choice was, and he went with it here and absolutely got them the win, right? He pushed that lead basically by himself from around 10 points, a little bit more than that, to 20 plus points. That's big in a game where they were threatening a little bit and starting to make you a little bit nervous here. And Jonas Valanciunas closed that door on it. The other thing he did was play good defense, right? We know the offense. We know he's reliable there and what he can do. It was the defense. And I'm here to tell you, as I told you in yesterday's show, if you're an everydayer, he's been playing good defense. The Pelicans are an elite defensive team. They are an elite defensive team. You saw it in this game. We'll look at that in the Monday or Tuesday, one of those shows. I want to kind of break down what they're doing defensively and why it's working so well and why maybe you can get along with it, get away with it with Jonas Valanciunas out there. He was good defensively. You saw some blocks. You saw a little bit of rim protection. Yes, he's limited. He can't switch and get out on the perimeter, right? And the Pelicans like to run a switching scheme, which prevents guys from getting into the paint and opponents from getting into the paint. And that's how they kind of have rim protection here, right? Golden State Warriors just 48 points in the paint compared to 64 for the Pelicans in this game. But they are defending well with Jonas Valanciunas out there on the court, at least during the regular season. There might be some moments in the playoffs where he's hunted in the pick and roll, right? Like that's definitely something to worry about long term. But that's also why you have Larry Nance Jr. I don't expect to see as much Jonas Valanciunas in the playoffs when you have Larry Nance Jr. on this roster that gives you the switching big that you want to really run the scheme that you want. And when they had him out there during the third quarter, right, the Warriors didn't have anyone that could run the pick and roll, and that's where Jonas Valanciunas can really shine. He wasn't a liability out there on the court defensively when that team wasn't running the pick and roll. And so when you see that, the Pelicans took advantage. Again, they saw what the Warriors were doing, and they made the right tactical adjustments. It was great to see. That's growth, not just from this team, but from the coaching staff as well. There was growth with this team in general that you saw. I want to get into that again in the third segment when we look at kind of the overall victory that they had here. But I really want to highlight Jonas Valanciunas. When you look at this roster and upgrading at the trade deadline, which is less than a month away, it's why it's something I've been focusing on the show recently. You can upgrade from Jonas Valanciunas. Jared Allen is an upgrade, don't get me wrong. But the amount of resources, picks, players you would need to send to get that upgrade, whatever that is, right? Is it this big? Is it that big? If it's not a significant upgrade, given how Jonas is playing, that the defense is good with him out there on the court, invest those resources in another area. Maybe that's more shooting. Maybe that's a backup point guard like Tyus Jones, someone I highlighted in yesterday's show, or Lauri Markkanen, right? There are other areas you can upgrade with that stuff that maybe gives you more of a gap there. It's just kind of maximizing the resources, the picks, the players that you have. So feeding the hot hand in Jonas Valanciunas, good defense from him, and it was an advantageous situation. And having a guy that you can rely on in the playoffs in Larry Nance Jr., who was great, right? You saw that swat that he had in the third quarter, maybe the fourth, I don't know. The second half all blurs together because they were dominating. This was a fun win here. And you saw just kind of what makes the Pelicans so dangerous out there on the court. So coming up, one of the things that made him dangerous in this game in the past couple of games since the Lakers lost is three-point shooting and moving the ball. Let's look at Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Jordan Hawkins, everyone getting out there, moving the ball, getting those open three-point looks. Let's look at how the offense was elevated without Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram. Coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about PrizePicks because PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's also the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS because it's just you versus the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros, sharks, you pick more or less than on the stat projection for 2 to 6 players. And then you just watch the winnings roll in. And with the NFL playoffs here, basketball season underway, you can get combo projections across both sports. So you can take CJ McCollum and Travis Kelce at a combo of 10.5 3-pointers made plus receptions. And they have an injury reboot policy, the only place that has something like this. Your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If a player exits the game in the first half, doesn't return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, all lowercase, and use code LockedOnNBA, all lowercase, for a first-time deposit match up to $100. That's free money right there, up to $100 on any first deposit that you make. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, use code LockedOnNBA. PrizePicks, it's daily fantasy sports made easy. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the Number One Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team, whether it's trade rumors, trade targets, whether it's the X's and O's of the offense, the X's and O's of the defense, which we'll get into next week, whether it's individual play and why they're succeeding. We're going to look at CJ McCollum in Friday's show because he's playing outstanding basketball right now. We cover it all here. So make sure Locked On Pelicans is your first listen today and every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We also do these live shows. And in this live show, I got to get through the first three segments. There's things I want to talk about that you need to know from this win. And then we're going to get into the interactive part where I'm going to talk to the chat, interact with y'all here. There's a lot of y'all here with me. This is fun. It's going to be a bonus fourth segment. We'll go as long for a while. We'll go as long as there's questions, essentially. So we'll keep it rolling here on Locked On Pelicans. It's going to be a fun show. Make sure you get your questions ready for the fourth segment. And for your second listen today, it's a channel. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So we are talking about the Pelicans. I keep laughing every time I see this score. 141-105. That is ridiculous. On the road. On the road. That's insane. I have a stat for you. This comes from Drew Porsche at Talent Stats. The Pelicans have scored 140 plus points in road games 3 times this season. 3 road games with 140 plus scored. Prior to this season, they had scored 140 plus points in a road game 3 times total. They have doubled that, the franchise mark, in one season on national TV, right? I like what Eric Peterson says here. Can't collapse in the last 5 minutes if it's not a close game in the last 5 minutes. Yeah, you score 140 plus. You don't need to worry about it being a close game, no crunch time. We'll get more into the win, the points, and the national TV stuff and everything with that, because the Pelicans can definitely change the narrative after a win like that. Let's get into something, though, that really elevated them in this game, and that was the three-point shooting. They took 43s in this game. 4-0. They take normally around like 30, 31. That is a significant number here. Better than that. They hit 19 of them. 47.5% from 3. Oh, we should all just be so happy about that. That is an absurd thing here, right? That is an absurd stat for a Pelicans team, but they've always been capable of doing this, right? And it started early. Jonas hit 2 threes in the first quarter. You had Herb Jones making threes. He was 4 of 7 in this game for 12 points. You had Trey Murphy coming off the bench. Started off a little slow, was 1 of 6, and he finished 4 of 11. So he went 3 for his next 5. He had 16 points. Jordan Hawkins getting minutes in this one with Jose Alvarado being available but not playing in this one. Hawkins comes in and starts 4 of 4 from 3. 14 points. He was awesome in this one, right? Larry Nance Jr. hit a 3. Dyson Daniels hit a 3. CJ got it going early in the first quarter too. He's 2 of 7, but the 2 threes were big. And he's been playing well, and his role is working here. When the three-point shot is falling for the Pelicans, look out. Look out when that's the case, because it opens things up so much for this team. So it doesn't always, though. It takes a little bit to get it to opening things up. So let's start with Herb Jones here, right? One of the reasons he shot 7 times is he was wide open 7 times because the Golden State Warriors, as every team is doing to Herb Jones right now, doesn't defend him out on the perimeter. They leave him wide open and throw a second body in on Zion Williamson. One of the things I see people saying is like, Zion's not playing well. His numbers are down, right? We've talked about this if you're an everydayer on the show. They're doing that because the spacing has been bad because there aren't three-point shooting threats out there at times, right? You even saw Willie Green kind of fall into his trap here of playing too many defensive guys at once and just having no offense, no scoring, nor spacing for Zion Williamson. So the book on how to slow Zion is out. It doesn't mean he's playing bad. It's just he's being defended really tough, I think is the bigger thing here. But when Herb Jones goes 4 of 7, here's what it does. It doesn't space the court yet. It makes teams pay, right? Like that's kind of been the goal, is it makes teams pay. When you make teams pay, they learn from those mistakes and they start adjusting and countering. And that's what you're going to see start to happen with Herb Jones eventually. It might take longer in the season for it to get there, but him taking those shots, him making those shots is a really important thing. Over his last 8 games, not counting tonight, because I don't have this one tallied into it, he is shooting 46% from 3. That is an incredible number. When he gets the ball and takes that 3, it's not more likely going in than not. That would be above 50%. But you get what I'm saying. He's making them pay. Eventually, that's going to be on the scouting report of, oh, hey, this guy's shooting well. We need to close out on him. We need to cover him. We can't keep him wide open for 3 in the corner. So him taking those shots and more importantly, making those shots, this really only works, right, if he makes those shots. Makes teams pay. Eventually that will lead to better court spacing. It takes a while. It takes more than 8 games. It takes more than like the final 20 games of last season. You've got to kind of, in a sense, change the perception of you as a player. And he's still thought of as a defensive guy with no offense, even though he's been working well off ball all season. And the 3-point shot now starting to fall makes him a threat, makes teams pay. That's the biggest thing here. That's why we also call for more shooters, right? Let's get into Trey Murphy, into Jordan Hawkins here, because them getting more minutes and more importantly, playing with each other and playing with Zion Williamson. And this is the big thing. If there's one takeaway from this segment, well, there's 2. It's that eventually, if Herb Jones keeps making these 3-point shots, the court will get spaced with him out there. The other part is, y'all saw the little 2-man game developing between Trey Murphy and Jordan Hawkins, right? You can play those 2 together. That's a terrifying thing for opposing teams because guess what? Those guys are already on the scouting report. You saw Trey's just deep 3, which was a super smart play in the third quarter to go 2 for 1 at the end of that quarter to get 2 possessions to the Warriors 1, which was an incredible move. Deep 3 like that, what are you supposed to do? You got to put someone on him. If he's going to take those and make those, that's going to be a problem. He's had a couple of games where he hasn't taken a shot inside like 28 feet. You have to defend him. He's on the scouting report. Same thing for Jordan Hawkins, right? He got on the scouting report after his first couple of games and they buried him on the bench and teams weren't as worried about him because they figured he wouldn't be playing a ton. But if he plays 20 minutes again and goes 4 or 5 from 3, you're spacing the court now. And more importantly, making teams pay. That's what you want to see and that's what's going to terrify teams. All 3 of Trey's makes, I think, were 3 of the 4 were deep 3s above the arc. 1 was a corner 3. That's ridiculous, right? That spaces the court. So when you're getting that, it's going to lead to spacing. And it's just going to make teams pay with everything with that. So those deep 3s, right? You had CJ McCollum in rhythm. So why are these shots falling? Why are these shots working? That's what I want to get to here too. It's because the ball is going inside. They're getting Zion in post-ups. He's kicking it out because they're playing unselfish ball and developing a lot of chemistry, and you're seeing the ball move, right? Everything is in rhythm, and good ball movement is leading to them finding open shooters and the right shooter and getting those guys the ball in their shooting pockets where they can get up with it and then, of course, launch the 3 in rhythm, which means you can just make that shot a little bit easier, right? They really did that in the half court a lot, but they also do it in transition. I haven't pulled the numbers. This is something I want to look at. We might turn it into a show, into a segment here, but they are lethal in transition in this game. I don't have the fast break point numbers in front of me here. Maybe I can find those really quickly. I don't even know if it's going to be kind of like accurate because I think some of those transition opportunities ended up not really being fast breaks, but they also, basically with it was, we're moving the ball well in transition, passing up a good shot for a great shot, leading to some wide open 3s, and the Pelicans killed the Warriors in transition opportunities. So if you could be a good enough to above average to a lethal team or a good half-court team offensively. That's scary, not something the Pelicans have always been. You can be lethal like that in transition where you get the highest point per play, point per possession, point per play type. That's something that's very, very scary to opponents. And it's why you're seeing the Pelicans, again, score over 140. They've done that in 3 road games now this season per talent stats. And that's something that they have never done before, right? They've had 3 total in franchise history, and they've done 3 just this season alone. That's an incredible thing. The team is starting to find their rhythm, starting to get into the groove they want and be the version of them that they've imagined now that they are healthy. With these guys, with them stepping up their play, right? Trey's stepped up. Herb Jones has stepped up. Jonas Valanciunas has stepped up. Notice we haven't even talked at all about Brandon Ingram or Zion Williamson yet. I'm looking at what's the math here. I'm about to hit 21 minutes of me talking. And we haven't really talked about Brandon Ingram or Zion Williamson. That's an incredible thing to say, right? That's absurd. That's why when people have said you don't need to make a panic trade, right? The Knicks made that move for OG Anunoby, and I saw people, and again, it's small vocal minority on Twitter being like, make a move, Pelicans, what are you doing? They've believed in this team. They believed in what head coach Willie Green wants to do. It needed a little bit of time to get figured out. They're doing that. And now look at this team, right? Let's talk about kind of the larger picture around the team here. I want to look at Zion and BI here because I thought they actually played relatively well. Not amazing, relatively well in this game, but it really opened things up for others. Let's talk about all of that, the bigger picture, and then a bonus segment where we're going to answer your questions from the chat here. So we'll do a bonus, however long we want to go for, and just talk with y'all and hang out. So that was something we're going to do. It's going to be really fun. Stay tuned. One more segment, then we get to your questions in the chat. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I want to tell you about Jase Medical. Look, we come to sports to kind of escape some of the crazy realities of life. But for a minute, let's talk about being prepared for real life. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of one of the worst flu seasons in a decade. It's kind of scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if a friend or loved one got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from life-saving medication they needed. But thankfully, no one needs to worry about that because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. Stuff that could happen to any of us. So visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Look, we live in South Louisiana. I keep one of these. I have a Jase case in my hurricane to-go bag, right? Just in case you need to evacuate, this something that could potentially save your life. So go to jasemedical.com and use code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Again, jasemedical.com for a Jase case of 5 different antibiotics. Use code LOCKEDON to get 20% off your order. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. We have a bonus segment coming up where I'm going to answer your questions live here as we're streaming it. This has been a fun show here, a real fun kind of week for the Pelicans here. So subscribe wherever you get your podcast and available on YouTube. Become an everyday or listen Monday through Friday. Or if you listen 1 day a week, listen 2 days a week. You listen 3 days a week, try listening to 4 days a week. Up it a little bit. Supports the channel, helps keep this free and 5 days a week for you as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A lot more coming. We're going to get back to the regular interviews with people like Aaron Summers, with Will Guillory of The Athletic as well. Things I want to talk about as we're hitting kind of the big part of the Pelicans season and schedule, and trade deadlines coming up. You don't want to miss a show. They sometimes build on one another here too. So please subscribe. Tell a friend about the show, right? This team's good. This team's fun. A couple of statement victories recently. If you have a friend that's not clued in, get them listening to Locked On Pelicans. For your second listen today, go support Ross Jackson, host of Locked On Saints. Black and gold, what are they going to do? They're going to make some staff changes, right? Blowing out the Falcons and then still not making the playoffs, kind of disappointing. Not even kind of, big time disappointing. Definitely need to make some changes there. Ross Jackson going to be breaking down everything black and gold over at the Locked On Saints podcast. So let's wrap up this victory, 141-105. That's still such an absurd thing to say. Such an absurd thing to say. 141-105 win over the Golden State Warriors, right? We haven't even talked about Zion or Brandon Ingram. They just scored 141 points. And we haven't talked about Zion Williamson or Brandon Ingram. We didn't really need to. Look, when you have the three-point shot falling like that, they don't need to fill it up in the stat sheet, right? Zion Williamson had 7 assists in this game. He had the third highest plus minus of anybody on the team in this one, the most out of the starters, even more than Jonas Valanciunas. When that three-point shot's falling, because he is a focal point of the offense, get him the ball, let him kick it out, let them move the ball till they find an open shooter, and it's the right shooter, and they get the ball to that shooter in the right spot, just like we talked about in the last segment. Good things happen. He's a focal point, just 3-4 guys, right? Then you saw him start to take over the fourth quarter just a little bit, get things going. Just a quiet 19.7 assists, 5 rebound night on 12 shot attempts. Just like didn't even feel like he broke a sweat. He looked in command of this game, didn't he? If you saw him in those TV timeouts, right, talking to head coach Willie Green, talking to other guys on the Pelicans, he knew what the Golden State Warriors were going to do. He looked like he had been watching film. He looked, and Doris Burke said it, one of our favorites here of Locked On Pelicans. By the way, Doris Burke listens to Locked On Pelicans, listens to all of the Locked On shows. She knows what's up. And Zion looked like he had just been more locked in, more prepared, gave more of an effort, just cared, like gave more of a damn, right, in this game than he has before. He's coming around. I thought he took too much flack after that loss to the Los Angeles Lakers. I really did. I even defended him on the show. And you're seeing why. Again, teams are defending him differently. That's knocking down his counting stats that you see in the stat sheet on Basketball-Reference or in the box score. But he's impacting the game in very, very positive ways. And he's even trying harder on defense. It's really all you can ask for him right now. He looks good right now. Like, he looks really good right now. Even if the points per game, those type of things aren't like the highest they could be. It's definitely okay. B.I. was somewhat of the same way. He was just kind of trying to do his thing. They were throwing double teams at him. You know, he was taking probably tougher shots than he needed to, but he's definitely been playing so well that I think he's earned the right to do that. You'd like a couple more threes from him, but again, you just didn't need him to do much and just keep the ball moving and do his thing. And he was, again, locked in defensively. We did a whole show on how he's been playing on defense, and he has been really, really good. Right? One of the things you notice from him here is he's working as, the help defender really well. He plays the low man role often, and I'll break that down with what the Pelicans do defensively, where he rotates over and you see him just cutting off dribble drives to the rim. There were a couple of times when he was the primary defender and they tried to take him one-on-one, and he just positioned his body well, moved his feet well. The footwork was good to cut those drives off and then kind of throw the entire Warriors offense out of whack because of it. He was just great in this one. What I also loved about this game is it was a national TV game. Let me ask you this. How many times, this is a rhetorical question. You know the answer if you're a big Pelicans fan. How many times have the Pelicans pooped the bed? I was like, can't swear. Pooped the bed on national TV. How many times has there been a national TV game and they just come out looking horrible, like they did against the Los Angeles Lakers in Vegas, right? Or how many times in seasons past have they basically not had Zion play, right? National TV game, and he's going to be out for whatever reason. Now, there's rules with that this season, but they went in and just dominated this team in a way that they should. Two games they've done this in a row, and they've done this repeatedly, actually, right? 2 games in a row now, they've come out so strong that the opposing fans, they're on the road, they're in a hostile arena, and boos are coming down from the fans there, not for the Pelicans, but for the Kings, for the Golden State Warriors. The Kings fans love that team. They love the light, the beam, and everything, right? They have a very loyal and passionate fan base. They don't boo the Kings very often. They booed him on Sunday with what the Pelicans did, being up by as many as 50 freaking points. And then you go into Golden State, Dynasty, and you smack him in the face, and their fans boo them after all of those titles. That's how demoralizing it was. We don't normally see the Pelicans do this. This has not been something that they've done in seasons past, right? How many times have we said they kind of play down to their level of competition, right? They crap the bed on national TV regularly. But they haven't been letting off the gas here. They haven't been coming out looking flat. How many games in the beginning of the season did you need Jose Alvarado and Najee Marshall to bring the energy off the bench to elevate the level of play from this team? You didn't need that in the last game. You didn't need that in this game either. That's growth. That's growth from the players. That's growth from the coaching staff getting these guys ready. That's exactly what you want to see from this team, and that's what's making them scary right now. And to do this on national TV, this is a changing the narrative game. I might change, when I change the headline, do everything after this, I might kind of change it to that because the Pelicans just, I think, changed the narrative about them. If you watched, and I'm not going to take shots at national media coverage, right? National media coverage is like cursory is best. I do Locked On NBA. It's our national show. Gets a ton of listens. I got to cover every team around the league. So one night a week, I'm a national media person. I get it. You just can't have the level of insight on all 30 teams that you can on one, right? So I get when you go to ESPN, when you watch NBA Countdown, they're not talking properly about the Pelicans. It's why you come to me. It's why you go to other places that are Pelican-centric, or should, and tell friends about that so that they come too and support Locked On Pelicans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day like that. But the entire narrative around the Pelicans was, what exactly? They don't trust him. They don't trust him. This team's not good. I don't think this team's good. It was more about the Golden State Warriors to start the game. It was entirely about the Golden State Warriors to talk the game. I think when they were doing picks, everyone picked the Warriors, right? Or most people picked the Warriors on that show. And they didn't talk at all about how well the Pelicans have been playing, right? You know they have a top 3 defense. I think actually the best defense for the past month since that loss to the Lakers. They've had a top 5 offense, a top 5 defense since that loss to the Lakers, and they look really good. And we've been talking about it here on Locked On Pelicans. They didn't mention it once on national TV. That's okay. That's not really their job. It's fine, in my opinion, right? But now, after this one, they looked too good. They've been playing too good to ignore. This is a change the narrative kind of game. One of the things about the Pelicans in January, what did I say if you're an everydayer? As we previewed the January schedule. It's tough. There's a couple tough games coming up, right? We're going to really know who the Pelicans are and what they're made of after this January schedule. Guess what? They just answered the call big time on ABC, the biggest stage you could get on here. They were on, and they killed it and beat one of the most popular teams in the league. Statement game, I think, was the game against the Minnesota Timberwolves where they beat the top team on the road, killed them. This one was a change the narrative game. This is, okay, you can't ignore this team now. They're playing too good, playing too well, whatever it is. We're going to be covering it here on Locked On Pelicans. This was a fun one. And it just said a lot about this team. So coming up, I'm going to end. It's going to look like I'm ending the show. We're going to hit the outro card. I'm going to say goodbye. I'm not actually saying goodbye. We're going to go into the live Q&A part, right? Your questions in the chat. We've got a ton of y'all in here. We'll go for a while doing this. This is a lot of fun. We're all excited about the win. It was also an early West Coast game, so that was really cool too. So stick with me for like a minute here as we wrap up the show. Bonus 4th segment on YouTube starting in a second. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Become an everydayer. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Comment down below on YouTube. Comment in the chat right now if you are an everydayer. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. The image is coming. Stick with me. We're going to stay live. And we're going to answer your questions next in a bonus segment on Locked On Pelicans. Okay, we're back. Bonus segment here on Locked On Pelicans. This is where I get to interact with y'all and have fun with you, answer your questions. I've seen a bunch in here. We got a ton of y'all in here. This is so much fun. Thank you for being here with me. Let me start with that. We hit 9,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're over 9 now. This is just a Pelicans-based channel. We don't cover Saints. We don't cover LSU. We do nothing else here other than Pelicans talk. And it's blowing it out of the water, and that's because of y'all, right? You know, when people say New Orleans isn't a basketball city, remember that from like 2 years ago, when they say the Pelicans should move. 9,000 subscribers might not seem like a lot, but that's basically half the Smoothie King Center. That's insane for something that's only Pelicans based. If I did Saints, if I did LSU, I think that would be a different thing. I don't. It's just the Pelicans, and y'all show out every single day. I know most of the names that comment every day. I see you, P-Lids. Hi, dude. We know ABJ 504 doing things, right? There's a number of y'all that do it. And so I appreciate y'all being here with me, making this fun for me. It's enjoyable. Sometimes it's tiring. I'm exhausted. I have other jobs that I do too. And we get to just, I don't know, have fun together and celebrate together. So this is really cool here. So I just want to, again, thank y'all for being here and everything that you do to make this community wonderful and for supporting me and for supporting the channel. And that's why we do these little parts, right? This part's for you. Ask your questions here. If you're an everydayer, let me know. We'll read out your names and everything here, right? Like that's one of the things that's like a lot of fun. Ryan Lecomte says, I'm an everydayer here. Nola Moley says, but you do mention Green Wave occasionally. I mention them, but I don't like cover them, right? I'm not going to spend significant time doing that. We're not going to kind of market with Tulane as a Tulane alum and all of that. Old Baldy here says, early West Coast game helped me out. Yeah, that was kind of surprising. I had this one scheduled for like 11:30 to start the show. And then I looked at it and it's like, oh, that's kind of weird that it starts at like, I don't know, like 7:30 or whatever it was. So that was really cool here. Brett Bergeron says Pels are steamrolling. They are right now. Silverwolf, you're from Australia, New Zealand, right? Everydayer, just more often on Spotify. That's cool too. Wherever you get the podcast from, that's exactly what you want. Thomas Atkins says, and thank you. Now, look, thank y'all. You don't need to thank me. I like doing this. This is really cool. Plus, they pay me, and that's thanks enough for everything here. West Bank Rick, how you doing, dude? Says, I will drink to this. Yeah, you can toast the Pelicans tonight. They're 4-1 in January, right? And that's been surprising. This was a tough part of the schedule. 2-2 or like 2-3, 3-2 would have been a success. 4-1 is really, really good here. Dan Quinn says, I just realized we're 11-4 since that Lakers game. That's why I thought there was an overreaction to it. There was a lot to criticize there, but I thought the Pelicans have been playing well, and sometimes those bad games like tend to happen, right? So those things are, yeah, how it goes. Philip Gilry says, Jake, are you disappointed if the Pels don't make the playoffs and win at least one series? If they don't make the playoffs, yes, at this point, that's going to be a disappointment no matter what. Barring like some of the injuries that could happen, right? If BI and Zion both go down and they miss the playoffs, like it's annoying. You get it. It doesn't mean it's okay. And then that still leads to bigger questions. If they miss the playoffs, I think you need to kind of overhaul everything. It means Zion probably missed time. BI might have missed time. And can you just keep going forward with two guys that don't play as much as you'd like them to? I just don't think you can do that. And something's got to give. And it means trading away those guys. So in terms of winning at least one series, I don't know about that. It depends on their seeding, depends on what the rest of the West looks like. I think that's too early to say. But definitely missing the playoffs means like change everything here. Chris Reed says he's an everydayer here. The Brown Hornet says, Jake, if you could hold hands at the movies with any Pelican, would you pick Jose, Trey, or someone else? That's hold hands? I don't know. I'd probably hold hands with Jose. I want to be closer to him, so this could be mean. So I could look a little taller than him, and then people look at me, and that makes me look better. Trey's super tall and would like tower over me, so that's who I'm going to pick here. Let me know who everyone wants to hold hands with if they go to the movies with a Pelicans player here, because that's kind of like a funny question to me for everything here. Eric Peterson says, when do you think Larry Nance makes the memes he posts after the game? I don't know if he does them or if someone does them for him, but the fact that he turns those around so quickly, I wonder if like the team is like talking about it on the bench. That might be a good question to ask him after a game, if what goes into making the memes. Those are a lot of fun though. And when the Pelicans don't do that kind of little like walk-in Pelican video thing they do anymore, it's nice to have some sort of ritual after wins like that. Steve Going says LA, New York, San Fran, Chicago, Philly, and SD have, where did the question go? 35% of the TV market's TV makes them their money. If you were in their business, who do you want to see in the playoffs? I mean, look, you want LA and New York in the playoffs. Like those are the things that matter, but it's also not how it goes. Although it looks like they're rigging things for the Lakers after that win over Toronto there. Big Pab says everydayer for years. Mr. Fista says you have to mention the wave. Roll wave. I'm a Tulane alum. Love Tulane. Dark Knight says, do you think Zion needs to impose his will more often in the beginning of the game? No, I don't, right? Like, look, it worked. Guys were making their shots. If guys are making their shots, pass out and get the ball to the open guy. If you trust them, right? If you trust them. Right now, I trust Trey. I trust Hawkins. I trust CJ. I trust Herb a little bit. Pass out. Don't force a shot, right? One of the things you saw when Zion attacked the basket in this, how many times did he get knocked away from him? How many times did he lose the ball? Did it go out of bounds because we just poked through? He had 4 turnovers. Don't force things if you have guys you know can make 3-pointers. I think that's something to kind of keep in mind here with all of that. Mick Evander Frago says, everydayer from the Philippines. He's been here for a while as well. Scott Greason says, what changes do you think the Pelicans made after the 44-point blowout on national TV to the Lakers? They look really good right now. This is not the Pelicans team I'm used to watching. Not on national TV, it ain't. Definitely not on national TV here. That was, again, this is surprising, not something that they normally do. Part of the changes were, I think it was kind of their mentality, right? Like they came out looking different, right? They came out just playing harder, better. They looked flat in that semifinal game against the Lakers. Maybe that was Vegas nightlife winning the battle the night, the game before the game kind of thing or what. They've come out and played really well. And they're moving the ball more. They're making their 3-point shots. They're just kind of doing everything they need to be doing. The defense has been elite too. They're getting in transition more. All those things kind of compound and build off one another. And that is exactly what you want to see from the team, right? Zion elevated his game. BI elevated his game. They shot more threes. Those are all big things. Willie Green grew and is playing less defensive focused lineups. That's important too. Those things kind of matter here. Cole says, top seeds, here we come. Right now, they're looking like it, right? Old Baldy says, this is going to continue, though, Jake? And I said, yeah, I think so, for the foreseeable future. You've got to try and do it, but they dominated the month of December in a way that they should have. When you look at those 4 losses they have since that game, right, 2 are to the Memphis Grizzlies kind of in heartbreaking fashion. 1 is a 2-point loss to kind of an upstarty Houston Rockets team. So 3 of the 4 were winnable games. The only one that wasn't was the blowout loss to the Clippers, who were playing as the best team in the NBA at the time, right? You'd like to convert some of those losses to wins, but the Pelicans have been doing a better job of that recently. So, they easily could be something like, 14-1 since that Lakers loss. 11-4 is pretty good though. Like you kind of look at this and it's like, you just need to kind of take what's in front of you and maybe I don't want to say not complain about it, but kind of look for the good, glass half full approach to all of this. Jimmy Wooten says, I listen every day. Love the podcast. At this point, we're playing so well. Other than a few games, how do we consider trading anyone other than the guys who are not getting minutes? I think if there's the right upgrade, you could go and do it. The other reason why you might trade someone is, I don't know if this team's truly a title contender yet. I think I need to see it more throughout this month of January. If they steamroll through the rest of the schedule, I'll really believe in this team. This is a tough stretch. January was looking scary. We're about a third of the way through and they've looked really good so far. If they continue to do it, this team maybe is a dark horse contender. I'm not ready to call them that yet. Just need to see it a little bit more. This team is good. Don't get me wrong. If there's a move that makes you a true contender, you think, then you go and do it, right? That's when you'd give up a guy like Dyson Daniels. If there was a player that you're like, this is the guy that puts us over the edge. I don't know if that player exists at the trade deadline right now. Or if the salaries would match for the Pelicans to be able to do it. But that's where you would start to kind of get into something like that. But this is also patience. And right, given their salary cap situation, go listen to the Monday show. The salary cap situation, the luxury tax, all of that is going to factor in what they do at the trade deadline. Don't forget, last year is the only person who said they weren't going to trade Jackson Hayes. I was the only person that said they weren't going to let trade Jackson Hayes and they were going to let him expire this offseason. They did that. Otherwise, they'd be $10 million into the luxury tax right now, basically, if they signed him or if they had traded him. That's not a way to do it, and that wasn't going to work. The salary cap, the luxury tax influences what this team does. Keep that in mind. Listen to Monday's show if you haven't already, because that's going to be an important thing for what they're going to do. Jim Clelmer says, with the 2025 draft being strong, if we don't use our number 1 pick before the deadline, would you trade for a 2025 pick? No, probably not. I don't think they need to think that. That's, I think, getting real. So you'd be trading a 2024 pick for a future pick. There's just too much risk in that depending on where it could fall. I don't think teams would do that really either. So that's something that I don't think you're really going to end up seeing happen here. Silver Wolf says, Lakers game was a turning point, and also sometimes teams have a bad game. I've seen people try and say after every loss, it's just a bad game, just a bad game. That's not true. There's lessons in a lot of these losses. Sometimes though, it's just a bad game. That Lakers one kind of was everyone stunk. It wasn't just on Zion. Everyone stunk. They all learned from it. they all tried to be better, and that's kind of the most important thing here. Eli Pearlstein says, big test Friday against the champs. I agree. Also on national TV on ESPN, we're going to see what they're made of. That's why I want to see it a little bit more here. This is a great question, kind of answered on Monday's show too, but Abram Gilder says, so if we keep winning, will that change our mindset on paying the luxury tax? Maybe. I think they'd like to duck it if you could, right? You pay the luxury tax for the right guy. Kyra Lewis Jr. is not the guy you want to pay the luxury tax for, right? He's not playing. You trade him, you bring in Tyus Jones. You trade Jonas, you get Jared Allen. You upgrade a position, and you're still in the tax while jettisoning Kyra Lewis Jr. You pay the tax for a guy like that. You don't pay the tax for a guy that's not there. I was actually talking to our Locked On Nets host today, and I was like, they have a salary cap exception that you could basically trade Kyra Lewis Jr. just into. So you could trade him without taking any salary back. I'd put a second round pick or a heavily protected first round pick on that just to get rid of him, since you just don't need him and there's no point in paying the tax and foregoing anywhere. I think my estimate of it was like $16 million is the swing of paying the tax and not getting the revenue payouts for Kyra Lewis Jr. So no, even winning, I think they'd still try and dump Kyra Lewis Jr., but they're not going to make dramatic changes to the team. And it could be like one of those things. Joshua Louvier says, two things, Jake. I know Jose is coming back from an illness, wondering why he didn't play. And if we continue to play like this for the rest of the month, can we be a top 5 seed in the West? Yes, they can definitely be a top 5 seed in the West if they continue to play like this. As for Jose, sometimes you're just hot. They're playing well. They put up 46, 45 points in the first quarter. Do they need to play him at that point? Probably not. Maybe it's just a little bit better to rest him. We'll see if the rotation changes in the next game. He does well against Denver, so we'll see when that happens. Flight Mizark says, I want to see Brandon get up 6+ 3 pointers per game. I'd like that. I would have liked to have seen him take more in this. He didn't. Sometimes that's an okay thing here too. I don't know why everything just jumped on here and I just lost where I was in the chat. Okay, going back to it here. West Bank Rick Willie, 100 wins. Yep, we know that one. Josh, I'm gonna botch names and I'm sorry. So Joe Larivier says Jake Madison needs a Supermax deal from Locked On so he can do this full time. No, I'm good. I like doing this part time. I appreciate it. I'm not reading. I didn't see that question before I started reading it. Otherwise, I probably would have skipped that one. We don't need to talk about me. I'm just here to do the show for all y'all. Robert Mason, Jake, you make the show too. You need to get Joel and AD on for an after show. That would be nuts. I'll try and get some of them after the games. I'm going to go back to doing some of the live shows on the court after games too, but just a little bit easier here when I am in my office/studio here. Scott Brantley says, Pels did this with no GTA, no Matt Ryan, scary team for the rest of the season. Matt Ryan will play a role when he comes back. That shooting's good. I think that's an important thing here. Steve Going says, do we still have the mid-salary exception? I got to take a look. I believe they have part of the mid-level exception, but it's the taxpayer mid-level exception, given that they're in the tax, so it's limited. They have a little bit of it left. That's used to just sign guys. That's not used for trades or anything like that. So if someone's bought out, you can use some of that money for it. I don't know if that's really going to come into play with everything here. If you're going to try and upgrade the team, it's really going to just be through a trade and not really signing anyone. They're not a buyout team, right? Like, I don't think that's really going to kind of be a thing here. 99 Dog, I like this question. Which team out west do you think is the toughest matchup? I guess so far it's been the Memphis Grizzlies, but they don't have Ja Morant anymore, right? I think you're still looking at a team like OKC can be tough for them. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is really good. They have guys that can move the ball. Their defense is elite. The Pelicans have had trouble with offense. I worry about that a little bit, that if Willie Green falls into some bad habits against an elite defensive team, that they're going to get shut down. But they do well against Minnesota. They do well against Sacramento. I think the Clippers scare me a little bit too, but they should scare everyone across the league. Other than that, we'll see how these two games go against Dallas. If they can split these, I'd be really happy with that. They get beat twice. Dallas has won that series 3-1. That concerns me a little bit, but kind of every other team I feel good about, right, in terms of the Western Conference and what the Pelicans can do here. Let's keep going with the questions you guys are asking. Y'all are in here hanging out with me. We'll keep going here. Deep Marlin says, how concerning is clutch time and close games for this team? He's an everyday, or they are an everyday. I don't want to assume genders here. Honestly, I don't know if it's that worrisome yet. They've done better recently, and that's kind of what you want to see. The other thing is, if you just blow teams out, you don't need to get into crunch time. Those numbers are great for what they've done so far this season. Blowing the double-digit leads aren't great either, but they held on in this one. They've held on against the Sacramento Kings. That says something, I think. So it's a concern, but we need to see it now that this team has looked like they've turned a corner, I think. D says, love how Zion hasn't been sitting out long when hurt this season. That's part of the load management. Look, that's him taking better care of his body and things like that. Something's working here. So that's definitely paying off. Dan Quinn says, Jayhawk will be an all-star one day, 100%. Hope so. That'd be great. He's better than I thought he would. He's played better than I thought he would. He's impacted the game in ways that I wasn't expecting before. He was a good fit already. When he gives you other things, like that's been a good pick so far. Hopefully they keep playing him more. Vince Vileborn says, I'm more than an everydayer, LOL. Been loyal to the soil since 2002. I'm old. Look, appreciate you being here. That's awesome. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks all y'all for tuning in here. It's why we do the show. Ryan LeComp says, part of me hopes they don't make a big trade. I just love this team and the chemistry. They seem to really care about each other. Look, there's a lot of different ways to look at this, right? Sometimes you just want to like the team on the court. Did you like the Saints this year? Because I didn't really. They have some fun players that I like, but man, just not like, to me, the most likable team. And I hate that, right? They could have made the playoffs and I would have been like, I don't like this team, partially because I don't like Derek Carr. It's not fun having a team, even if they're good, that you don't like. This is entertainment. This is something we put emotion into, right? When it doesn't feel like that emotion is for what you want or you care, it just doesn't work. So it's okay if you don't want to make a trade, if you like the team. That's totally fine. If you take the opposite approach and are like, no, it's about winning, I don't care if this team's likable, that's fine too. I think both those sides of things are valid. It's your fandom. Kind of, I don't want to say embrace it, but like live it how you want. So no, I don't think there's a problem with that. Also, this team has looked good here, right? So there you go. October says Jake will have to stand on a ladder to interview Trey. No, Trey's just going to have to bend over to get closer to the mic for me. I'm not going to stand on a ladder here. Chad Campbell. Oh, we're here now. Okay. Oh, wow. Y'all threw questions in there. Chad Campbell says, I'm holding Zion's hand so he doesn't take my popcorn. That was mean. Don't do that. We don't need things like that. He's also got another hand and more money than you, so he can buy what he wants. Big Pab says, does this national game win get BI and Zion to an all-star game? No, they didn't play well enough. If Zion had 40 in this, it would have put him kind of on the map. If he has a bigger game against the Denver Nuggets, I think right now we're only looking at fan voting. Fan voting is 50%, 25% is the players, 25% is the media. You know, fan voting is just a popularity contest, right? That's why when you look at it, it doesn't really correlate to like the level of play of guys. You just got to perform on the biggest stages. Zion has 40 against the Denver Nuggets. I guarantee you he shoots up in all-star voting. It's really going to be that. 19 points won't do that. BI's game won't do that. I don't think BI has a chance of it. Zion's the guy because of the fan voting that would. That's why he's gotten in a couple of times before. Wiggy Will says the only thing that was missing was Najee dribbling the clock out and doing a Jameis at the end, windmill dunk with 2 seconds left. Yeah, that would have been funny here. Victor Hugo, the only player that disappoints on a regular basis is Cody Zeller. I don't think so. Like his minutes in general have been good this season here. So I think that like he has played pretty well. Wowie Zowie says, I second the Jake Supermax. Jake brings the energy every show. Appreciate y'all. That means a lot. I love y'all tuning in here with everything. Jonas Thomas C says, what up, Jake? At Oshner, working, enjoying the show. Thanks for working at a hospital and doing what you do here. So that was a great thing here. Silver Wolf says, important one to look ahead. Who should the Pels have in the All-Star game? Do we even have anyone that should be there? One for a future show. I've talked about that a little bit on the early returns on the fan voting. I don't know if anyone gets in this year. Just kind of as simple as that. Like the fan voting's not doing them any favors. That's a big one you got to get. I don't think they've just played at an elite level. Part of it is you have 3 guys that are averaging above 20 points per game in Zion, BI, and CJ. And so it's kind of taken away from each other. So they're losing individual glory for, like a shot to be a better team. I kind of like that sacrifice from them, right? They're the only team with 3 20-plus 20-point per game scores. So if they're willing to make those sacrifices, I love that. It just probably means they're not going to be in the All-Star game here. C Keys 726. What up, Charles? Realistically, what seed in the playoffs is the most realistic for the Pelicans here? I still think you're probably looking at like the 4th seed. Minnesota looks legit. Denver looks legit. The Clippers look legit, in my opinion. After that, it's probably like the Pelicans, I think, right? OKC is going to be in that mix too. We'll see if their youth pulls them down a little bit if they hit some sort of wall. But like 4 seed, I think is, probably what you're looking for. And I think what you really like to see them kind of go for. Home court advantage in the first round would be really cool here. So Nola Moley says, when JV took over in the third quarter, it was right after ABC announcers wouldn't stop talking about how the Pels needed to trade him for a rim protector. I saw that. And look, I love Doris Burke. She talked about that a little bit too. They did too. And then he went out and dominated. And then you're like, oh, wait, maybe not. This is why you listen to the local shows. I've been saying don't trade him. I think he's been good. So I get it here. Justice says, I want to see what Charles Barkley is going to say after this win. He always speaking crazy about the Pels. Look, again, this is a narrative changer for the team here. Cole says, with the way the Pels are playing, can we get a top 3 seed? Yeah, I think so. Like, I think they need to get a little bit help, but they're playing well enough to kind of be in there right now. So that's awesome. Howard Harper says, I'm an everydayer watcher and season ticket holder. Actually, I watch several times a day. I appreciate that. Dapped you up at a game. If you see me out in person, say hi. I'll chat Pels with you for a couple minutes there. Philip Guillory says, next 3 games are huge. They are. This is a tough road trip, but they've answered the call so far here. Cloudy Bat says, every day, long time home fan, how often do you get to talk to the players? I talk to the players every home game. I have a credential. I'm there courtside talking with them before the game. Then we hustle to get a show out to you after the fact. So it's one of the cool things about doing this, but helps with the information to bring to you. It's not like we're like hanging out with the players or things like that or anything like that. Thomas Atkinson says, it looks like playing with space minimizes the risk of injury. That helps. Fewer bodies for Zion to go through, right? That's definitely a thing here. Jim Clemmo says, what Scoot-like clone trade would you go all in for? Oh, I'd have to think more about that one. We might save that for other things. Joshua Louvier says, do we trade Kyra at the deadline? Yeah, I think so. I think even if they're winning, if they're good, you trade them to not pay the tax. Kind of answered that one a little bit before here. And let me see. Ryan Lecomte says, there ain't truth to what they say in the broadcast that Zion starts slow because he's taking in data on how he's being guarded. Did they say that? I wouldn't be surprised by that. You saw him talking with the coaches. I said he looked in command of this game at times. So there's definitely just more of a locked in, more of a preparedness to him with everything here. Dark Knight says, I'm glad to see Hawkins getting some run. Yep, that was a really great thing here. Links Da Vinci Zaya, would you consider trading CJ to develop Hawkins? No, CJ's been too good. We're going to talk more about CJ in tomorrow's show. Thank you for the natural segue to that. CJ's been awesome and key to this team. You don't move him right now, I really think. Rachel S says, another job. Hi, Rachel. We're lucky to work with two of the most dedicated, dialed in Pels folks out there. Without going into details, yes, I agree with that. That was awesome. Let's keep going through some of the questions here. We'll go a little bit longer and then start to wrap up here. Wowie Zowie, says the offense looks like it's been really started to gel after the Lakers loss, finding and making open threes, just like the coaches have been emphasizing. Yep, that's exactly what you want to see. Those 3-point shots are really important. Brian Ross says, I don't understand the Denver to Dallas back-to-back. Oh, that's how it happens sometimes, right? That's the schedule here. Blake Ristel says this month is the truest test for if this team has the ability to contend 3.5 games out of the first spot in the West, though. It's tight. West is tight. West is tough. They're answering the challenge. That's all you can really say, right? 11-4 since that debacle of a Lakers game. There's not much more you can say than that, right? The results are kind of speaking for themselves with all of this here. I just saw a question that I'm going to maybe skip to here because that was a really, really great question. We're going to get to it and we're going to start wrapping up. So I'm going to start answering these a little bit quicker right now. Thomas Atkins says they beat the Denver Nuggets. I'm calling it right now. All right. He's putting it on the board here. Blue Lightning blowouts tend to be just plain bad games. If you lose by a few points, that's a failure to execute. I mean, blowouts can also be you executed really well, just like the Pelicans did in this one, just like they did against the Kings, just like they did against the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's not only on the opponent and things like that. Oliver Ball says, you think they start to flex more of our games to nationally televised games in? Yeah, I don't know how those rules work, but I wouldn't be shocked if you start to see more of that. Malia Maxwell, any news on Matt Ryan? No, just we're waiting. Kind of as thing, simple as that. Zachary Begoon says, even if we win the whole thing, I don't see ESPN saying anything positive about this team. Nola versus everybody. That's why you come to Locked On Pelicans. I explained the national media stuff at the start of the third segment. If you missed it, go back and watch that here, I think. Ollie Part says, what do you think the Pels front office should do with the abundance of picks they have, considering the rotation is pretty much locked in at the moment? I think you should trade them or keep them. One of the two, right? But like I think you can upgrade the back. I'm big on upgrading the backup point guard spot. That's the area that I think you could really use. I'm real big on Tyus Jones for this team. I'd use a pick to try and go get that. West Bank Rick, how do you feel about EJ Liddell? He was my 19th or 20th player on my big board that draft class. Very high on him. Just waiting to see him play. But given that they're winning, there you go. Can't fault them for not playing him yet. Scott Greason asks, can you explain how the luxury tax works? I can in Monday's show. Go watch that. Cover it for you. That's why you got to become an everydayer, folks. Let's see here. Keith Turner, glad to see Jordan Hawkins getting playing time. That's the difference. Levon Bullock says, need a Pro Pels talk. Pro Pels link up. They used to invite me on the shows. They haven't in a while. I'd go on anytime. Hector Lopez says, what do you think is going to, what do you think is going the future for the coaching staff? I mean, I think the coaching staff is set and they're doing a really good job and they're growing and improving too. So I'm pretty happy with everything here. EKEE Mac, I don't know what to say there. Jake, I'm an everydayer. You don't trade anyone, stick with what you got. I think that makes a lot of sense here. Jonathan, Mr. Shive, should we go after Larry Markkinen in your opinion? Will we sign BI for the max money? Is he worth it? The BI one I'm going to save. We're going to look more at that later in the season, closer to the off season. Go listen to yesterday's show. Talked about Larry Markkinen. I think he's a great fit. I talked about what trades would look like. And we're going to, there you go here. ABJ504 with a comment. Jonas Tomasi says, why is it when we are up, we are up big, all we do is throw up threes? Every time Trey Murphy touches the ball, he wants to shoot a three. He needs to go to the basket more often, in my opinion. I mean, they shot 19 of 40 from three. Shoot more threes. That's a real good thing here. Scott Brantley says, it's great the team is playing like this with all the local TV games coming up, minus the one kind of being flexed out but changed on Friday. But yes, this is going to get people excited about the team here. This was my favorite question so far, and I need to text him this one. I'm even going to take a screenshot of this literally in this moment as I'm doing the show live to send it to Matt Moscona here. So this is funny here because it's always the question there. I'm literally saving this. And Zachary Bigoon says, is Moscona back to being emotionally invested in this Pels team? He probably should be at this point. I'm literally going to text him that. That was funny. That might be like my favorite comment of the night here. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. I really loved that. That was a lot of fun. We've gone long, over an hour in the live show, 30+ minute bonus segment for y'all. We'll be back to doing live shows, maybe one on Friday. Might be out with some friends watching the game, so we will see. But of course, we'll be back, if nothing else, on Monday to break down everything over the weekend, to cover more about this Pelicans team. CJ McCollum-focused episode for at least 2 segments in tomorrow's show. He's been really good. I will explain why. I want to dive into the X's and O's of the defense, what they're doing, why it works really well. As also, this has been fun. We have almost 300 people here still with me. Thank you all so much. The show's for you. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison. At Nola Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're going to hit the outro video again. Second time, because I like doing these little bonus segments with y'all.